Mike Damergis here with Rick Neuheisel, the former quarterback, of course, at UCLA, head coach there as well with CBS Sports now. But you're really famous for being a quarterback for the San Antonio Gunslingers in the USFL back in 1984 and 85. And it's getting some popularity again because there's talk about the USFL returning. Talk about your days in the USFL, Rick, and thank you for joining us on the USFL podcast.
Those were great days. From the race from San Antonio to Livonia, Texas, because Clinton Mangus, our owner, had said that finally he had found a bank that would pay us. This is pre-cell phone, pre-Google Maps. This is pulling over in gas stations to get maps to find Livonia, Texas, and it was a gumball rally to get there. I had so many great teammates that were from all over with all sorts of stories as to how they arrived in San Antonio. We were the Bad News Bears and then some, and we had a blast, absolutely a blast, which is why I think everybody who was associated with those teams is looking so forward to another chance for young people to get a chance to extend their football career.
I was talking to Dan Jiggets years ago when I did my book about the USFL, and he talked about the payment for the players, and that went on with the Blitz as well. But Roger Gill got stuck in the team's office, which was a trailer, as the players were banging at his door to get paid. Is that true? Can you verify that?
I can add veracity to that story. Yes, there is no question that took place. John Bearfield, who was nicknamed Dr. Doom, made sure that Roger Gill understood he wasn't coming out of that trailer until he had a check that was actually going to pay Dr. Doom. That was actually not going to bounce. Yes, we had some unbelievable episodes with insolvency while we were there in San Antonio. We played a game in Orlando and couldn't get on the plane to go home because the check had bounced. So we had to wait until the next day with the lieutenant governor of Texas verified that the check actually would go through.
Despite these stories and despite your team, of course, playing at a high school stadium, basically, and you had artificial turf, which is basically concrete. And I heard that the turf was painted as well. Is that accurate too?
No, the turf wasn't painted. What had happened? We had the league had a rule of 32,000 as a minimum of
seats
attendance. Mm-hmm. You had to have seats for 32,000. Well, the high school stadium, Alamo Stadium, at 18,000. So we had 7,000 folding chairs in the back of each end zone. And they were painted in gunslinger green and gunslinger blue. And no one ever sat in them. And when it got hot, remember this was the spring and summer league. When it got hot, those things were like nuclear. So it was quite a scene, no question about it.
I mean, the stories are really for Hollywood. I mean, it's really unreal. Take us into the huddle in some of the games too, as well. We'll went on with the team, talk about the conversations on the bus rides, and it's, lack of a better word, it's colorful, and in other words, bland sports world where most players don't say anything. The USFL had stories, and they had some great stories as well. Let's talk about some of the fun times and stuff went on the huddle, the bus rides, and stuff USFL fans of the Gunslingers and just USFL fans in general would like to know.
We a couple have come to mind. We went to Chicago to play the Blitz. And Vince Evans was going to be the quarterback there, and we're playing in Soldier Field, and the bus driver clearly was having trouble finding the entrance. We circled Soldier Field like 3 times, and finally a guy in the back of the bus, I think it was Mike St. Clair, said, "I think you lost him. I think you can go in now," as if he was trying to lose somebody who was tailing us. That made me laugh. We finally did get in there to play a game against the Blitz. I remember playing Jim Kelly's team, the Houston Gamblers, in the Astrodome, and Gil Stanky, our head coach, wanted and Gil was kind of a absentee type of coach. He wasn't, all hands on deck type type of guy. He, as a matter of fact, when we scored our first touchdown, he was in the stand sitting with his wife, which had been kind of his normal routine when he was the head coach for Texas A&I. But there was no one couldn't congratulate the head coach on our first touchdown because he wasn't there. He's in the stand. But he wanted to call a play during the 2-minute warning against the Gamblers, and he said, "I want to run the hitch and pitch." I said, "Coach, we don't have a hitch and pitch." and he said, well, hell, here, let me. And he grabbed a piece of paper and he started to scribble a drawing of what the hitch and pitch, as if I was going to take the drawing into the huddle and show the guys. And I finally, as he was, this chicken scratch was going on the paper, I said, "Coach, we have lots of plays. Can we just call one we know?" He goes, "Well, just go out there and draw it in the dirt." And he pointed at second base, which, the Astros, the Houston Astros were, sharing the building. And again, spring, summer league, second base was out there about where we were. And he wanted me to take the huddle to where the dirt was so I could draw the hitch and pitch for the team. And I said, "I'm going to go ahead and call a play we have." And I wandered back in the huddle and I told the team, Coach wants the hitch and pitch. And Bill Winters, our center, absolutely almost grabbed me by the throat. He says, "We don't have a hitch and pitch."
It reminds me of a conversation I had with Tom Ramsey, we had with John Hadel, and Hadel basically said to Ramsey, "Come on, Ram, just make it up. You're a football player. Let's just draw it out in the diagram." And then you also played the blitz, and Marv Levy was talking about when he took over the team, they switched the Wranglers and blitz switch teams, and there was no money. And Levy was giving out toilet paper because the players didn't have toilet paper as well. So you talk about the scarcity that went on. Now, coming from such a great program, a renowned historic program like you did in college, did you sometimes just put your hands in your head and say, what the hell's going on here? What is this?
Almost daily, but because we were all in this together, a bunch of guys that, like myself, who've just come out of college, or a bunch of guys who were, on their last legs as a football player, trying to get one more year, trying to get that dream back to the NFL. I mean, the camaraderie of these teams was off the charts because we were all dealing with kind of the same issues. Now, there were some teams that had owners that were, absolutely above board, doing things the right way. The Tampa Bay franchise, Steve Spurrier got his, head coaching chops with the Tampa Bay Bandits. And that was a fantastic opportunity for him. And look what it meant for his career. So there were some organizations that were terrific. I remember playing in Jacksonville against the Bulls that they had 60,000 people there. That was a blast. So
absolutely. It was. And talking about the Bulls that have 70,000 people. So finish up on your statement there. I'm sorry about that.
No, I just was saying that there were a lot of, great moments as well, in terms of the camaraderie that we enjoyed. I still got pals that I played with during that time. And matter of fact, I've heard from a lot of them since this announcement that the USFL is returning, just excited that, some other guys are going to get to share in the kind of experiences that we all shared.
It certainly sounds like almost like a college camp experience in so many ways. North Dallas 40, I guess, in so many ways. And I remember talking to Bart Oates, and he was saying if he had the opportunity, he would have preferred just to stay in the USFL. He loved it that much.
No question. I mean, I got a chance to coach in the Alliance of American Football here recently, and we had the same kind of collegial type of atmosphere, right? In terms of, hey, listen, we're trying to coach you guys to give yourselves the best chance to get back to the NFL, or have a chance in the NFL if you've not previously had one. This is exactly what the USFL is for, and it creates a opportunity for fans to get closer to the action than maybe they can when you're talking about professional football at the NFL level. So this is a lot of fun. And what I think goes sometimes unmentioned is there's such an appetite for football, especially from the television standpoint, that if the parties, the owners and league management and so forth can all get together and formulate a plan, I think it has some real staying power. What happens is sometimes, greed or opportunity, just shows up and people try to press the button of advancement too fast. Certainly that was the case with our USFL, that it blew it up when it really didn't need to. We had ESPN, we had a lot of good things going for us, and unfortunately, the combination of things that happened during those years forced our hand probably too early, and kept it from being maybe a longer lasting entity.
Yeah, and certainly they had the contracts with ESPN, ABC in hand if they stayed in the spring, but if it went to the fall, they would squash that. And we're talking with Rick Neuheisel, former San Antonio Gunslingers quarterback, now with CBS Sports. The connection as well with UCLA as well, head coach, former player. You talk about the need for a spring league and the passion fans have for it, because let's be honest, it's like having steak. If you have steak every day, you're not going to crave it. But with football, it's like having steak 16 times a year. With baseball, you have 160 games, on and on and on. And I would think teams, the need for it, say Love in Green Bay, or teams could get another look at Darnold or maybe Josh Rosen. If the USFL or Spring League was around, NFL teams wouldn't have to start to wonder, can this guy do it? And there would be so many fewer question marks. I'm just amazed that the Spring League hasn't sprung up properly and gotten a real strong support from the NFL. Your thoughts?
I totally agree. Although, college football kind of serves as the minor leagues for the NFL, or the feeder system, if you will, right now. And I think the reason that the NFL hasn't decided to bite off on this idea of spring ball and to grow talent in this particular league is because they see the risk of injury, right? Every time you go out there, you're putting people at risk. And when you're putting people at risk that you're paying for, it looks as if a bad investment, as opposed to putting people at risk that you're not paying for, that you can, lure via the draft or free agency or what have you. But there's no question that the NFL could grow not only players in a spring league, but they could also grow coaching talent, administrative talent, front office talent in these capacities. And while they're trying to grow opportunity for all, folks in the playing side of things, the front office side of things can certainly develop in this capacity as well.
And let's not forget our broadcasting talent, because Charlie Steiner started as a play-by-play for the New Jersey Generals as well.
There you go.
Yeah, the one thing that the USFL had right, more than they copied the blueprint of the AFL, was quarterbacks. Now, what did the USFL know that 27 other teams, including my Jets, didn't know about Dan Marino, that they made him the number one pick for their draft? What was it about the USFL that they had a great record for selecting quarterbacks, John Elway as well. That there was no doubt about these guys, that the USFL's target when they came around was, let's get the gunslingers literally in the quarterbacks. They got it right there.
The gunslingers were brilliant with their quarterback selection there in the second round. The youngster out of UCLA, no question. They saw what the NFL couldn't. That a guy that's 6 feet tall and runs a 5.40 40. I mean, they realized that guy could still play. Listen, there was no question there was plenty of talent. Doug Flutie, Jim Kelly, Steve Young, those guys all were, credentialed and then some, right? And certainly were big draws for the USFL, and it gave them leverage against what the NFL offered them, and they took full advantage of it. And I think their star grew by playing in the league, and it certainly didn't hinder their performances, as both Steve and Jim Kelly are Hall of Fame players, right? So it was a terrific time in my life. It's one of those things I look back on fondly, and I look forward to the rekindling of this league, because I think it's going to create more opportunity for youngsters.
Just want to get some of your thoughts on some of the players that went against you. Hall of Famer Reggie White, for example. What the obvious reason that the fans know he's so great, the sack master. But talk about the game plan going against the Reggie White, and then we'll talk about other players like Sam Mills and stuff like that.
we played against Reggie, who was with the Memphis Showboats, and clearly we had to double team him, but that wasn't enough. I think I still have a Reggie White handprint on the inside of my right arm. As he went by, as I tried to climb up in the pocket and get a pass off, he reached over and slapped my arm. The ball went skyward, and I think it was 3 or 4 weeks later I actually felt my arm again. It was incredible, the just brute strength that he had, and obviously he went on to an NFL career. There were so many really good players in the league that
like a
Gary
Sam
Gary
Anderson.
Mills.
Yeah, Sam Mills got a second chance within the USFL.
Sam Mills was believed to be a guy that too small, just too short, can't play middle linebacker, and there he is playing for I think the Philadelphia franchise, and he was the star. He was the star, and when Jim Mora ended up going back to the Saints, Sam Mills went with him, and the rest, as they say, is history, right?
So yeah, exactly. And the offensive players that came out of the USFL, you're talking about Gary Anderson, played with
Gary Anderson.
Yeah,
I ended up being on his team in 1987 with the Chargers, and all that you saw, that flash and stuff that got done as a all that flash that got done while he was with the Bandits was on display with the Chargers. I mean, he was a star in the NFL. Just a terrific player that Steve Spurrier kind of opened the window to see what Gary Anderson was capable of, and certainly the Chargers took full advantage of it.
One other a couple other wide receivers. Anthony Carter went to the Vikings. He had a huge impact on them. Gary Clark, Ricky Sanders went with the Redskins. The Giants had Maurice Carthon and Oates and Sean Landetta. So the teams that invested in the USFL players, it really impacted them and propelled them to the playoffs. And the teams that kind of shoot away from them lagged a little bit in the 80s, it seemed.
It doesn't matter where you find your players, as long as you find them, right? Whether it's you're coaching in college, coaching in professional football, it's about the Jimmies and the Joes rather than the X's and the O's. And the USFL obviously loved the fact that it attracted some big names, the Anthony Carters of the world, who have been so brilliant at Michigan, right? And he goes and plays with the Oakland Invaders. That is the kind of stuff where, as a television viewer, you're going, oh, okay, I want to watch this. I want to check out my old Michigan Wolverine. And then you see how well he plays. And so when the league disbands, there's the Vikings saying, I want that guy. That guy's got to come play here. And it was like that over and over again. Doug Williams, who was fantastic at Oklahoma for the Outlaws, ends up being the Super Bowl winning quarterback with a couple of guys who were on Jim Kelly's team with the Houston Gamblers, Ricky Sanders and
Gary Clark.
Yeah,
Gary Clark.
And Gary Clark, who were in that run and shoot offense, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're all part of Doug Williams' offense. Those guys could all play, and that's what the NFL. What the business of the NFL and the USFL collided, ended up in a lawsuit, blah blah blah. But when you're looking for just who can play, you have to put all that, what uniform they're wearing aside and make honest evaluations. And those who were making honest evaluations knew there were a lot of good football players in the USFL.
And Gary Clark, of course, played with the Jacksonville Bulls, where they played in front of 70,000 fans. I remember against the Generals, a lot of excitement. Now, were you sitting back when you saw the success of the Anthony Carters making the impact with the Giants and the Redskins, certainly in the Super Bowl? Were you like, damn, did it make you look kind of proud to be part of the USFL at the time, to see the players have such success?
I was always proud of having been a part of the USFL, despite that it didn't last as long as I think all of us had hoped. And part of that, where they didn't vet the owners probably as well as they should have and tried to grow too fast. But those things happen. I thought it was a terrific league. It was kind of a fraternity because of the stories that were coming about with guys not necessarily being treated as quote unquote professionals, whether it be late paychecks or, you know, kind of the bare bones minimum of accommodation. Bottom line is it was a terrific experience. And it happened at a time where I didn't have much in the way of responsibility. I didn't have a family. I guess if I'd have had a family, it would have been a little bit more, you know, disconcerting. But ultimately, this was a blast, and it's one of those things I look back on very fondly.
Rick Neuheisel, former San Antonio Gunslingers quarterback, now with CBS.
We're the Gunslingers.
I was just going to say, give us a song.
The Gunslingers on the road or at home. Remember the Alamo, for such as we are known. We're the Gunslingers of San Antonio.
Well, Rick, I mean, Broadway.
Is that a dismount or what? I
mean, Broadway is calling. I mean, come on now. You got to go from CBS over there and head down to Broadway because they need you. I mean, honestly, though, Rick, a play needs to be done. You really got to talk to somebody over at CBS, do some kind of maybe an off-Broadway play as a test. You got the theme song. It's in people's heads. It's like on Seinfeld, Costanza. Rick, thank you so much for these minutes. And honestly, as a fan, as someone that went to the USFL games at the Meadowlands, I love the league. I think the team logos are great. I do hope they come back in some fashion. I hope they do it right, because there is a nostalgic feel. And when you mention the USFL to fans, it brings them back in time, like kind of like a favorite TV show, like Happy Days with the Fonz. Hey, you know what I'm saying?
I hear you, and I echo your sentiments, and fingers crossed that all that you hope for is actually what takes place.
Thank you, Rick.